So the first thing we want to decide for the setup is actually how large are we going to deal with in terms of our units. And basically what we want to do is take the bridge concept and reduce it to its simplest components. So the first thing you have to think about is each plank. How big should each plank be? So in this case, we're just going to get a simple cube. And we know right from the start that we want the bridge to actually be able to torsion and twist. So each end of the plank has to be able to rise independently in the y-axis. So that means we're going to require control objects on each end of the plank. So right away that means a center plank for the creature to actually walk on and two control objects on each end to control the actual spring movement in all directions. So what I'm going to do is just get a simple cube, and we'll just scale that so it's wide enough for the creature to actually walk upon. So you can see it's pretty comfortable there. It actually might be a little bit big. Let's go something like that. And then we want to scale it in the z-axis, something like that width. And it's really important to decide what kind of effect you want. Obviously, if I go with very slender planks, we'll have to use a lot of them to create a decent length bridge, and that in turn affects performance and the whole simulation. If you need it for the visual look, that's fine, but if you're able to get away with using less planks and get the same kind of concept across, that's a better way to go. And actually you should think about rigid body objects really as kind of control primitives, which you can then bind more complex geometry on. So basically every rigid body plank here can represent 2 or 3 high detail resolution planks you can bind to it later on. So this is more like a framework or a rig for the bridge than the actual final thing you would render. But anyway, just to keep things simple, I'm gonna make sure the scale of things are correct for efficiency and things like that. So you get the idea. So this is probably good width. We can still get enough resolution in terms of the motion, but we won't need too many of them to create a decent sized bridge. The last thing I want to do is just make it a bit narrower. We don't really need it that thick. It's just a piece of wood, and we'll translate it below the creature. Let's just move it back here. So that's pretty good. What we want to do is just duplicate that and then scale it on the one x-axis there to give the control object. And that guy we're just going to translate over onto the end. And then we want to duplicate that using the symmetry tool on the YZ axis to get the other one. So there we go. We have the basic structure for one plank. What we want to do now is the first plank we're going to make passive rigid body object, because we're basically going to bind everything else to these guys and have them support the structure basically. So once we've done that, we can now just quickly bind them together using fixed constraints, because basically I want to lock the control endpoints to the plank so it's fixed, and then transmit the forces through these control objects on the end. So we'll use the multi-constraint tool, fixed. I'll middle mouse click for each object. And there we go. We have the fixed constraints and we have our 3 objects, so we're good to go with our basic setup. What we can do is now just start duplicating that and translating it to create the additional planks. And I want to keep them spaced wide enough so we're covering a decent number of decent space. Too close means we need more planks to actually cover the same area. So again, it's a balancing point for things like that. So I'll just keep duplicating him, and I'm keeping them about 1 soft image unit apart, so about 10 centimeters. Go. And let's create about, I guess, 8 of them or so is good. So we have 5 there. We'll do 1 more. And there we go. So it's very important once you've done placing your rigid body objects to select them all and make sure to set the initial state, since as soon as you play back the timeline, they'll reset to the original position, so to the original plank, and you'll have to reposition everything. So it's a good habit to get into. So once we've done that, we can play that back. And the result is as expected. The planks don't fall with the gravity since they're passive rigid body objects. What we want to do is actually just go in and deselect these guys here and make the middle ones active rigid body objects. Oh, I need to deselect my constraints to get the multi-selection. So go in the rigid body properties and we'll make that active. And if we play that back, so as expected they fall to the ground. And now we can just start wiring them up using springs.